1936, a Lincoln penny slipped into history carrying a secret no one noticed. Across the ocean, a 1909 British penny echoed an empire's fading power. Decades later, a 1966 Washington quarter arrived in a world full of chaos and change. 3 coins, 3 eras, 1 hidden connection, each passed silently through countless hands. Each witnessed wars, recessions, and broken dreams. The Lincoln penny heard whispers of the Great Depression. The British penny felt the weight of a collapsing empire. The Washington quarter saw a nation divided and restless. None of them were meant to be special. Yet fate carved mystery into their metal. Collectors overlooked them for years. History buried their stories under dust and pocket change. But one question refuses to die. Why do these coins keep resurfacing together? Is it coincidence or a forgotten signal from the past? Every scratch tells a warning. Every year stamped hides a message. 3 ordinary coins, bound by an extraordinary secret. And once you see it, you'll never look at change the same way again. The story of the 1936 wheat penny begins during a time when America was slowly recovering from the Great Depression. The year 1936 was one of cautious optimism for the United States as people began to find work again. Industries were reviving, and the government's New Deal programs were helping rebuild confidence across the nation. The Lincoln wheat cent, which had already been in circulation for nearly 3 decades, by this time was one of the most familiar coins to the American people. Its simple yet powerful design had become a symbol of endurance through difficult times. And in 1936, this coin carried that spirit forward. The obverse of the wheat penny featured the famous profile of President Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, a sculptor whose work had left a lasting mark on American coinage since its introduction in 1909. The image of Lincoln was meant to embody honesty, courage, and leadership qualities that Americans deeply admired, especially during challenging years like the 30s. On the reverse side of the 1936 penny were 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent United States of America and a pluribus unum. The wheat stalks were a tribute to American agriculture and the hard work of farmers who formed the backbone of the country's economy. Even in hard times, they reminded people of growth, renewal, and strength in unity. The minting of the 1936 wheat penny took place at 3 different locations: the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint. Each of these facilities produced millions of coins to meet the needs of the recovering economy. The Philadelphia Mint struck the largest quantity, and those coins bore no mint mark under the date. The Denver coins carried a small letter D, while the San Francisco coins featured an S mint mark. As collectors know, each mint mark can influence a coin's rarity and value. The year 1936 is especially interesting because it marked one of the first times the United States Mint began producing proof coins for collectors after a long pause since 1916. These 1936 proof pennies were specially made with polished dies and smooth planchets, giving them a mirror-like finish that distinguished them from regular circulation coins. Only a few thousand of these proofs were made, making them some of the most prized pieces among collectors. Today, these proof sets were sold directly to collectors by the Mint and represented a new era of coin collecting interest in the United States beyond their production. Details: the 1936 wheat pennies tell a story of transition in American life. The Great Depression had hit its lowest point just a few years earlier, but by 1936, there was a sense of progress. The Works Progress Administration had created jobs. The Social Security Act had begun to provide hope for the future, and Americans were starting to believe again in the promise of prosperity. The small copper penny circulating in the hands of millions of citizens symbolized this gradual rise from hardship. Copper itself held symbolic meaning, representing endurance and strength in the face of adversity. The average 1936 wheat penny was made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, weighing about 31 grams. It had a diameter of 19 millimeters and was designed to last for decades. Many of these coins circulated well into the 1950s and 1960s, carrying with them the touch of countless hands and the passage of history. Each scratch and mark on a circulated penny from this era tells a story, a memory from the pockets of Americans who lived through Recovery War and progress. The Philadelphia Mint alone produced more than 309 million 1936 wheat pennies, while the Denver Mint struck over 40 million, and the San Francisco Mint made nearly 30 million. Although these numbers might seem large, not all of those coins survived over the years. Many were lost, damaged, or melted down, making well-preserved examples more valuable to collectors. Today, the coins that remain in mint state condition, especially those with vibrant original red color, are particularly sought after by numismatists. Color grading is an important factor for collectors, with pennies often classified as red-red-brown or brown, based on how much of their original copper luster remains. The redder the coin, the higher the potential value. As for errors and varieties, the 1936 wheat penny is famous among collectors for its doubled die obverse variety. This error occurred when the die used to strike the coin was impressed twice by the design hub, but slightly misaligned. This created noticeable doubling on Lincoln's date and motto, especially visible on the words, "In God We Trust and Liberty." These doubled die examples are among the most collectible and valuable 1936 pennies. Depending on their condition, they can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Another subtle variety involves repunched mint marks, where the letter D or S was struck more than once at a slightly different angle, resulting in a shadow effect. Under magnification, these varieties remind us that even small imperfections can become treasures for those who study and preserve history. The value of a 1936 wheat penny varies greatly today, depending on its type and condition. A heavily circulated coin might only be worth a few cents, while a bright uncirculated red example could be valued at several dollars, and proof versions or rare doubled dies can be worth far more. Yet beyond monetary value, the 1936 penny stands as a reminder of America's resilience. The coin was handled by workers returning to jobs, by children saving their first cents, by families buying food, and by citizens watching the nation recover and move forward. It passed from hand to hand in movie theaters, grocery stores, post offices, and factories. It was a tiny but essential part of the economic heartbeat of 1930s America. The 1936 wheat penny also connects to broader changes happening in coinage design and mint technology. The mint was improving its production quality, experimenting with new processes to reduce wear on dies, and ensuring that coins remained durable for circulation. These improvements helped maintain the reliability of American currency during a time of immense national rebuilding for collectors and historians. The 1936 penny is also a link to numismatic revival, as coin collecting gained popularity in the United States during the 1930s and 1940s. Many young collectors started with wheat pennies because they were easy to find in circulation and affordable. This period saw the rise of hobbyist organizations and coin clubs across America, creating a sense of community among people fascinated by the small pieces of metal that told big stories. Even today, the 1936 wheat penny continues to fascinate collectors, not only because of its design and rarity, but because it captures a moment in time. It represents a year when the nation was recovering from despair, moving toward hope, and building the foundation for a future of strength and prosperity. Every coin from that year is a fragment of history, a piece of copper that has witnessed generations of change and growth. When you hold a 1936 wheat penny in your hand, you are holding a relic of an era when coins meant more than just money. They were symbols of perseverance, of unity, and of the enduring American spirit that refused to give up through economic collapse, war, and recovery. The wheat penny remained a companion to the Americans. The story of the British one-penny coin of 1909 begins long before the turn of the 20th century, because the penny was not simply a unit of currency, but a symbol of Britain's economic power, its imperial reach, and its social transformation. By the time 1909 arrived, the British penny had already undergone centuries of evolution shaped by monarchs, minting innovations, industrial progress, and the changing needs of everyday people. To understand the 1 penny of 1909, you must journey back to the foundations of British coinage when the penny first appeared in Anglo-Saxon times as a small silver coin struck by hand and bearing the symbols of early kings and local mints. Over many centuries, the penny slowly transformed, and by the Victorian era, it had evolved from silver to bronze, reflecting the shifting economics of 19th century Britain. As the Industrial Revolution accelerated and Britain expanded across the globe, the bronze penny became a coin that touched every level of society, from farm laborers to factory workers, from sailors in distant colonies to merchants in crowded city markets. By 1909, Britain was in the final decade of the long Victorian and Edwardian monetary tradition that defined the bronze penny. The reigning monarch in 1909 was King Edward VII, though he would pass away in 1910, leaving behind a short but significant reign that influenced the design and production of British coinage. The 1 penny coin of 1909 carried his portrait created by the talented engraver George William de Sole, who was responsible for some of the most refined and dignified portraits of British monarchs in the early 20th century. Edward VII's likeness on the penny featured a mature and confident profile, symbolizing stability, continuity, and imperial pride. This portrait dominated the obverse side of the coin, while the reverse presented the classic figure of Britannia, seated with shield and trident, a design that had become iconic throughout the Victorian era. Britannia represented Britain's naval supremacy and the idea of a unified, powerful nation guiding its empire through global change. The 1909 penny was struck in bronze composed of copper, tin, and zinc. This alloy gave the coin its distinctive warm reddish-brown color and allowed it to withstand heavy circulation in the pockets, tills, and money drawers of early 20th century Britain. Each penny measured 30.8 millimeters in diameter, making it a large coin compared to modern standards, and it weighed around 9.4 grams, giving it a solid presence. These physical characteristics meant the penny was easy to handle and identify even in dimly lit factories, shops, or streets. The size and weight also reflected a time when coins needed to convey tangible value through their physical form, long before the digital age when currency became abstract. In 1909, the Royal Mint was still deeply committed to fine craftsmanship and traditional minting methods, though it was also gradually adopting more modern machinery and improved quality control. The striking of the 1909 penny represented this blend of tradition and progress. Each coin was carefully produced to ensure that the portrait of Edward VII and the image of Britannia appeared crisp and clear. The lettering around the edges, including the Latin inscription proclaiming the king as Edward VII by the Grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith and Emperor of India, reflected the immense scope of the British Empire at that time. Collectors today admire the 1909 penny for the harmony of its design and the richness of its details, all of which embody the craftsmanship of early 20th century British minting. But the importance of the penny in 1909 was not limited to its artistic and technical qualities. It played an essential role in daily life. The value of a penny could buy small but important goods, including basic food items, simple tools, or children's sweets. It circulated in marketplaces alongside shillings, half-crowns, and sovereigns, linking ordinary people to the vast economic system of Britain. Because of its wide use, the penny became a familiar object to every citizen. Workers would receive pennies as part of their wages. Mothers would count pennies to budget household expenses. Children would save pennies for toys or special treats, and shopkeepers would hear the clink of pennies throughout the day. In this way, the 1909 penny was woven into the fabric of daily existence. The year 1909 itself was a time of significant change in Britain. The social and political climate was shifting as new ideas about workers' rights, social welfare, and taxation began to circulate. King Edward VII's reign, though, marked a period of modernization in British society with advances in technology, transportation, and communication. The penny of 1909 witnessed the bustle of expanding cities, the growth of new industries, the rise of organized labor movements, and the cultural shifts of the Edwardian age. In streets lined with horse-drawn carriages and early motor cars, in factories filled with the noise of machines and the chatter of workers, in rural villages, where traditional life continued at a slower pace, the penny served as a constant companion in everyday economic activity. Collectors and historians often view the 1909 penny as the closing chapter of an era because Edward VII died in 1910, and his successor, King George V, would introduce a new era of coinage with his own portrait. The 1909 issue is therefore historically meaningful because it represents the final full year of Edward VII's pennies before the mint transitioned to new designs. Many examples of the 1909 penny survive today, though their condition varies. Circulated coins often show smooth areas from years of handling, while uncirculated specimens reveal the full beauty of their original mint luster. Collectors appreciate the 1909 penny not only for its aesthetic value, but also for its connection to a pivotal time in British history. The metallurgy of the 1909 penny itself offers insight into the priorities of the Royal Mint. Bronze was selected to provide durability and affordability while still maintaining an attractive appearance. The metal mixture contributed to the coin's longevity, allowing many pieces to remain intact over a century later. These coins may show subtle variations in tone and coloration depending on environmental exposure. Some develop deep chocolate-brown patina, while others retain traces of the original red tint that collectors refer to as red or red-brown. These colors tell a story about the journey each coin has taken through pockets' hands and decades of circulation. The mintages of the penny under Edward VII varied from year to year, but 1909 saw a solid level of production, ensuring that the coin reached communities across the United Kingdom and even circulated in some British territories abroad. The spread of these coins across the empire serves as a reminder of how British currency functioned as a unifying economic force. For someone living in Britain in 1909, the penny was not just currency but a symbol of the empire's identity. The story of the 1966 Washington Quarter begins in the middle of one of the most dramatic transitions in modern American numismatics. To understand the significance of this single coin, it is important to return to the years leading up to its creation when the United States was experiencing a severe national coin shortage, a crisis of silver supply and economic pressures that forced the government to reshape the very nature of American circulating coinage. The Washington Quarter had already been in production since 1932, originally intended as a one-year commemorative issue honoring the bicentennial of George Washington's birth. However, because of its popularity and the practicality of its size, it quickly became the nation's permanent quarter dollar. For decades, it was made of 90% silver and 10% copper, maintaining the same traditional appearance that Americans had grown accustomed to. But by the early 1960s, the rising price of silver began to threaten the entire monetary system. As silver bullion values climbed closer to the face value of circulating coins, the U.S. Mint realized that people were hoarding coins for their metal content and withdrawing them from circulation. This shortage became severe by 1964, with many businesses struggling to obtain coins for daily transactions. The government responded by dramatically increasing mintages, but even this did little to solve the problem because the root issue was the rising market price of silver itself. In 1965, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, an historic shift which effectively removed silver from the dime and quarter and reduced silver content in the half dollar. For the first time since the 1790s, the quarter would no longer contain silver. Instead, the mint introduced a clad composition using an outer layer of copper nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This new composition gave the coins a slightly different look and feel, with a brighter surface and a distinctive ring when dropped. Production of these new clad quarters began late in 1965, but because of the ongoing coin shortage, coins dated 1965, 1966, and 1967 were all produced without mint marks and in extremely large quantities. This was done deliberately to discourage hoarding, since collectors would no longer be able to hunt for rare mint mark varieties. The 1966 Washington quarter therefore carries no mint mark, regardless of whether it was struck in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, representing a temporary era when the mint centralized designs and discouraged collecting in order to keep coins in circulation. The 1966 quarter design continued to feature the familiar portrait of George Washington, created by sculptor John Flanagan in 1932. His depiction of Washington, based on Jean-Antoine Houdon's famous bust, became the enduring symbol of the American quarter for more than 60 years. On the obverse, the image of Washington, faces left with the word "Liberty" above, and the motto, "In God We Trust" to the left. The date 1966 appears at the bottom. The reverse still showed the heraldic eagle perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath, symbolizing America's long-standing balance between strength and peace. While the design remained visually the same, the new clad composition produced a different luster and a slightly different shade compared to the silver quarters of earlier years. Many people at the time immediately noticed the change in color and sound, which led to mixed public reactions. Some welcomed the modernization, while others disliked the loss of silver, feeling that coins no longer carried the same beauty or intrinsic value. The production of 1966 quarters was extraordinarily high because the mint was working relentlessly to eliminate the national coin shortage. More than 821 million quarters dated 1966 were produced, an immense total at the time. These coins were struck using improved minting techniques that allowed for faster production, though some quality inconsistencies emerged because the mint prioritized quantity over perfection during those crisis years. Collectors later observed that many 1966 quarters show uneven strikes, weak details in Washington's hair or the eagle's feathers, and surface marks caused by high-speed production. Nonetheless, the majority of Americans simply needed coins for everyday use, and the 1966 quarter quickly became one of the most widely circulated denominations of the era. Another important aspect of the 1966 quarter's history involves the mint's temporary suspension of proof sets and uncirculated coin sets. From 1965 through 1967, the mint replaced traditional collector sets with special mint sets, often called SMS sets. These sets contained specially struck coins of higher quality than circulation strikes, but not quite to the level of standard proofs. The 1966 special mint set included a quarter with sharper details and a smoother finish, and today these SMS quarters are an important part of the coin's history. They show how the mint attempted to satisfy collectors while still prioritizing circulation needs. Some SMS quarters even exhibit a deep cameo appearance on both sides, making them highly desirable to advanced collectors who appreciate their visual beauty and relative rarity. The 1966 quarter also marks a turning point in American monetary policy. After centuries of circulating coins made from precious metals, the United States fully transitioned to fiat-based coinage using inexpensive metals whose value was not tied to market prices. This ensured stability in the face of economic fluctuations and allowed the mint to maintain reliable production without fear of hoarding. The move to clad coinage in 1965 and 1966 solidified the modern era of American coins, setting the stage for all subsequent decades of U.S. currency production. The 1966 Washington quarter therefore stands not only as a piece of historical metal, but as a symbol of economic necessity and national adaptation. It reflects the government's response to inflation, industrial change, and the realities of a modernizing economy. As the years passed, the 1966 quarter remained in circulation for decades and became a familiar sight in commerce throughout the late 20th century. Millions of Americans handled these coins without realizing the historical significance behind their creation. Even today, many 1966 quarters continue to circulate, though most have been worn by years of use. Collectors often search for examples in high grades or SMS versions, preserved with exceptional surfaces. While the coin itself is common, its historical context is rich and essential for understanding the evolution of American coinage. It tells a story of a nation undergoing economic transformation, of a mint adapting its practices to unprecedented challenges, and of a population that relied heavily on the quarter as a critical tool of daily life. The 1966 Washington quarter remains an important artifact of its time because it represents the end of an era for silver coinage and the beginning of the modern clad system still in use today. It is a reminder of the economic pressures of the 1960s, the ingenuity of the U.S. Mint, and the enduring legacy of George Washington's gracing American currency. Though simple in appearance, the 1966 quarter embodies a chapter of American monetary history filled with change, adaptation, and the reshaping of national standards in response to global metal markets and domestic needs. This makes the 1966 quarter a fascinating subject for collectors, historians, and anyone interested in the evolution of American money from precious metal tradition to practical modern coinage.